3 haunted farm horror stories that will keep you up at night. Welcome to DTC, the place of the brave, where the chilling tales of the past come alive. Tonight we delve into the heart of rural darkness with 3 true disturbing farm horror stories that will send shivers down your spine. These are not your typical ghost stories, but real-life encounters that have haunted the isolated fields and abandoned barns of forgotten farmlands. From eerie figures in the cornfields to mysterious disappearances and unsettling sounds echoing through the night, these stories will make you question the true horrors lurking in the quiet countryside. Brace yourself for a journey into darkness. Story 1. Creepy Farm. One night, the air as thick as the silence itself, I found myself on a trail that led to an abandoned farm, a place whispered about in the nearby town, but largely forgotten by the world. They called it Whistler's End. The locals didn't like to talk about it, always glancing over their shoulders or whispering when its name was mentioned. Strange things had happened there, or at least the story said so. But I wasn't one to believe in ghost stories, especially from people who hadn't seen the light of day in years. Still, something about the place, the isolation, the eerie silence that hung in the air, sent a chill down my spine. I thought maybe it was just the cold of the night, but the deeper I walked down the winding, cracked path, the more my sense of dread grew. As I passed through the rusted gate, I noticed the walls of the old farmhouses. Broken bricks covered in long black streaks, as if something had smudged its presence there and never left. The wind howled, a high-pitched whistling, making every branch and twig seem alive. It wasn't just the wind, it felt like the ground itself was trying to speak to me. Then a shadow moved. At first I thought my eyes were deceiving me, but no, there was someone ahead. A figure stood in the darkness, almost indistinguishable from the night itself. A man. If I had to guess, he was middle-aged. In his hand was an oil lamp, the flame flickering weakly in the oppressive darkness of the night. My steps faltered as I watched him stop, turning toward the light. The light illuminated the contours of his face, but something was wrong. Something was wrong. His face, it was blurry, as if the light couldn't capture the details, as if something invisible was blocking my view of his identity. I froze. Then the tension broke. A faint sound, like the faint echo of footsteps, reached my ears. There was no one there, just the wind. But I could have sworn I heard something. Maybe the ground beneath me creaked, but no, it sounded like footsteps, then a giggle. Not a child's laugh, no. It was a low, unpleasant giggle, the kind that made my skin crawl. My heart started to race, and I turned around. Nothing. Everything went quiet. The quiet was so oppressive that it pressed against my eardrums, and all I could hear was my own breathing, my heartbeat. Until there was another noise, a door creaking. No, it was the wood of the house itself groaning under some unseen weight. The next moments were like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. The wooden door, aged and weathered, suddenly creaked open by itself, as if expecting me. I stood there, unable to move, yet compelled to enter. I didn't know what pushed me forward. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear. But as soon as I stepped inside, everything changed. The house smelled wrong. Like old, damp rot mixed with the coppery tang of something much darker. My lantern illuminated only parts of the room, leaving corners of shadow that I was all too aware of. I took a hesitant step forward. That's when I saw it. Blood. Old, crusted stains scattered across the wooden floor. I felt my stomach churn. My brain screamed for me to leave, but my feet were frozen to the spot. I lifted the lamp higher to get a better look, and that's when I saw it. A shadow. A figure just standing there in the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light. It wasn't clear at first, just a blur, like smoke, flickering and warping. I don't know how long I stood there, transfixed by the shadow, but then something shifted. The air grew colder. My breath fogged up in front of me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as the figure's outline sharpened, becoming more defined. The longer I stared, the more I began to see. There was a face, sort of, a face, but wrong. It was covered in shadow, but beneath it I could see the faint outline of something inhuman, something that twisted and writhed like it was made of nightmares. I stepped back, stumbling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The hairs on my arms stood up. My hands shook as I held the lantern out in front of me, hoping the flickering light would drive whatever it was away. It didn't. And then I heard it again. Footsteps. But these weren't like the sounds from before. No, these were heavier, slower, deliberate. I spun around. The room was empty. But no, wait. My lamp flickered, casting long, wavering shadows. And then I saw it. A figure, no longer in the corner, but right in front of me, as if it had moved without me seeing. It was standing there, so close now that I could feel the cold radiating from it. Its form... I can't describe it fully, but it wasn't human. It was shifting, like something between reality and a dream. Its features were almost liquid, constantly changing, like it didn't belong in this world. I could feel it, this thing pulling me, its presence creeping under my skin. I should have turned and run. I knew I should have, but I couldn't. My body wouldn't obey. It was as though the very air had thickened, and I was stuck in place, glued to the floor by a force stronger than my will. And then it spoke. The voice was low. No, not one voice. 1,000 voices, overlapping and indistinct, like whispers in the wind. "You shouldn't have come," it said, and I could feel those words reverberating in my bones, as though they were meant only for me. My heart hammered in my chest, my breath shallow. "This place, it's cursed. You are cursed." The air grew colder, so cold that I could see my own breath turning to mist before my eyes. I could feel the temperature drop, the weight of something terrible pressing down on me, suffocating me. I should have run. I should have, but I couldn't. I was trapped in this nightmare. The thing's form began to warp again, shifting violently as though it were made of shadows and fear. Its eyes, or where its eyes should have been, glowed faintly in the darkness, staring directly at me. It wasn't a person, it was something else. Something that had never belonged in the realm of the living. I finally found my strength. I bolted for the door, my legs shaking, my heart threatening to tear itself out of my chest. I pulled at the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. It was stuck, as if the house itself was refusing to let me leave. My skin crawled as the whispers grew louder, more urgent, and I could feel that thing behind me, its cold breath on my neck. Finally, the door gave way. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran, faster than I ever thought I could, until the house was nothing more than a silhouette against the darkened sky. But even now, I can't escape the feeling that someone is watching me. And sometimes late at night, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still hear it, that voice, calling my name. It's not done with me yet. Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Story 2, The Haunting of Mrs. Roberts, a disturbing farmhouse horror story. It was a rainy night when Mrs. Roberts, an elderly woman living alone, decided to turn in early, seeking solace in the creaky, worn-down walls of her old farmhouse. The kind of house that had witnessed the test of time, filled with memories of a past she held dearly. I was Mrs. Roberts that night, tired, isolated, and yet comforted by the familiarity of the place I had called home for years. Little did I know, the very house that had always felt like a sanctuary was about to become the backdrop for an unimaginable horror. I'd been living in this house for decades, ever since my husband passed away. Over the years, the farmhouse had settled into itself, the floors creaking with the weight of time, and the furniture dusted with memories of days gone by. It was a comforting place, one that held the ghosts of the past, yet also offered peace in my solitude. But on this particular night, something felt different. The wind howled outside, pressing against the old windows, and the rain battered the roof with an eerie persistence. I decided to go to bed early, as I often did, hoping the soft hum of the storm would lull me into a deep sleep. I had no idea that tonight would be the night everything would change. As I lay in bed, my mind drifting off into the familiar rhythms of sleep, I suddenly heard a faint knock at the door, soft yet deliberate. At first I thought I was imagining it. Perhaps the wind was playing tricks on me. But then it came again, louder this time, as if someone was standing just outside, waiting. My heart raced, and I pulled the covers tightly around myself, trying to rationalize it. There was no one out there. I was alone. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I sat up in bed, listening intently. The knock came again, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, as if someone were walking down the hallway just outside my bedroom door. But I knew there was no one there. The house was as empty as it had been for years. And yet the sound persisted. I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe it was the wind, or perhaps my mind was playing tricks on me due to the storm. I tried to lay back down, convincing myself it was nothing more than a bad dream, but my body refused to relax. My pulse raced as I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling as though I was being watched. The footsteps stopped, and then a sudden chill gripped the room. The following days were filled with even more inexplicable events. The house, which I had known so well, began to change. My eyes, once so familiar with the layout of each room, now found themselves drawn to something different. The photographs, once bright and filled with cherished memories, began to fade. It was subtle at first, just a slight distortion of the colors, a soft blurring of edges. But over time, it became impossible to ignore. The faces in the photographs, the faces of my late husband and I, were starting to distort. His face, once so clearly etched in the frame, became a smudge, as if someone had smeared the picture with a wet cloth. His eyes no longer stared back at me, and his smile seemed to evaporate into the air. I could feel it then, the unsettling sensation that something was wrong. Something far beyond the ordinary was unfolding in my own home. But I couldn't explain it. I tried to chalk it up to my aging eyes or the oddities of an old house, but deep down I knew better. The photographs weren't just fading, they were being erased, as if time itself was unraveling. The images of my husband were vanishing, and with them my grip on reality seemed to loosen. It was on one particularly stormy night, as I sat in my armchair by the fire, trying to calm my racing thoughts, that I heard it. A whisper. Soft at first, like the wind itself was speaking, but it grew clearer, more distinct. It called my name. Maggie, it whispered, my husband's voice, unmistakably his, low and comforting as if he were right behind me. But how could that be? He had passed away years ago. I froze. My blood ran cold. The whispering grew louder, as if the voice was getting closer, right in my ear. I spun around in my chair, heart pounding in my chest. But there was no one there. Nothing. Just the empty air and the shadows dancing on the walls from the flickering fire. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. After all, I was alone in this house. There was no logical explanation. Yet I could still hear his voice so close, as if it was right there, just behind me. I could almost feel his breath on my neck, like he was standing behind me, waiting for me to turn around. The following nights were a blur of confusion and dread. Every sound seemed magnified, every shadow seemed more alive. The footsteps returned, but now they weren't just in the hallway. I could hear them inside my bedroom, pacing around me as I lay paralyzed with fear. The photographs continued to fade and the whispers became more frequent, more urgent. And then, one night, when I could no longer tell the difference between dreams and waking moments, I heard something far worse. A knock. A loud, insistent knock on the door, this time not from the outside, but from within the house itself. It sounded as if someone was knocking on the walls, on the floorboards beneath my feet. I stumbled out of bed, disoriented and terrified, trying to make sense of the chaos around me. But when I reached the hallway, I stopped dead in my tracks. The photographs on the wall were gone. The frames were empty, the images nowhere to be seen. Only the faded outlines remained, like ghostly imprints of a life once lived. In that moment, I realized the truth. The house wasn't just haunted, it was erasing me, erasing my past, erasing everything I had once known. And my husband, my dear husband, whose face had faded from every photograph. He was still here, in some form, and he wasn't letting me forget him. He had returned, not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as something much darker, something that sought to pull me into the abyss along with him. The whispers grew louder. His voice, once warm and comforting, now carried a sinister edge. It wasn't just calling me anymore, it was pulling me, guiding me, urging me to join him in whatever dark realm he had entered. And the house, the very place I had loved, had become the gateway to that place, a place where the past never truly left and where the dead never truly rest. Every night I waited, knowing that sooner or later I would have no choice but to answer. The storm outside may have passed, but the storm within the walls of my house raged on. And in the end, it wasn't just the house that haunted me, it was the deep, unshakable realization that sometimes the dead are never really gone. They linger, waiting, watching, and whispering in the shadows. As the days dragged on, the whispers grew louder, the house more oppressive. One stormy night, I could hear the knock again, this time followed by a chilling, familiar voice calling my name. His voice. It wasn't a comfort anymore. It was a command. I stumbled out of bed, heart racing, and made my way down the hallway. The house seemed alive, the shadows shifting as I moved. When I reached the living room, I saw it. His face, floating in the air. His features were twisted, his eyes hollow with something dark and unnatural. Before I could react, the walls groaned, the air thickened, and I was drawn to the open cellar door, the stench of death wafting up from below. As I was pulled closer, I heard his voice one last time. "You should have never come back." The darkness swallowed me whole, and with it, my final scream was lost to the shadows. The next morning, the house stood silent, untouched by time, but Mrs. Roberts was gone. And on stormy nights when the wind howls, you can still hear the whisper from within the walls. "Maggie, come back to me." Do you dare to listen to the dark? If tonight's tale gave you chills, let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear what creeps you out and what other stories you'd love us to explore. Don't miss out on the next terrifying story. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, and join the family that thrives on the unknown. Tap the notification bell so you're the first to hear every spine-chilling tale. Share this video with someone brave enough to face the darkness, and let's dive deeper into the creeps that haunt our world. Comment below and become part of the terror. The darkness is calling, and we want you with us. Farm whispers. Every night as I drifted off to sleep, I heard it. A soft, faint sound, like someone's footsteps moving quietly down the long, dark hallway of the house. At first, I thought it was just the old house moving, as part of the normal aging process that all old houses go through. But as time went on, I realized that it wasn't the creaking of rotting wood or the sighing of old walls. It was a purposeful sound. Someone or something was actually moving in the darkness. The sound, sometimes faint, sometimes clear, as if it were coming closer, then retreating, then coming closer. Sometimes I thought I could hear its breathing, each breath heavy and strange. But the thing was, every time I woke up, no one in my house could hear it. It was the weirdest thing. One night, I decided I wouldn't let the sound get the better of me. I waited until it was late at night when everything in the house was quiet, except for the faint light of the nightlight. I slowly opened my eyes. There was no sound. The house was still quiet. But as I turned around, preparing to continue my sleep, I heard it again. A sound, clearer this time, as if someone was dragging a pair of heavy shoes on the hard tile floor. The footsteps were getting closer. My heart skipped a beat, feeling as if someone was standing right behind me. I didn't dare turn around. I kept quiet, lying still, feeling the cold spread throughout my body. I couldn't close my eyes. I could still feel the cold breath, as if someone was standing next to me, waiting. Then suddenly a loud noise rang out, as if a window had just opened. I froze, a chill running down my spine. I couldn't believe my ears, but I knew I couldn't be wrong. I had closed all the windows in the house before, and they wouldn't open on their own. Frightened, I jumped up and rushed out of the room. But when I reached the hallway, all the windows in the house were wide open, even though I had made sure to close them before going to bed. A cold feeling rushed over me when I saw the doors wide open, as if some invisible force had pulled them open. Unable to think of anything else, I ran to the main door to check, hoping for some reasonable explanation, but when I opened the door, I found the surrounding space completely quiet. No one was there, no trace of intrusion or break-in. I turned around, but everything was different. The feeling of space seemed to have changed. The windows were now not only open, but also shaking gently, as if some force was trying to force them to open. And then I heard a whisper, very soft, as if someone was speaking close to my ear. A sound too soft to make out the words, but enough to make me feel like I couldn't breathe, like something was pressing down on my chest. Panic began to overtake me. I ran outside, though I had no idea what I was looking for. Was I going crazy? Was I imagining things? These questions kept ringing in my head, but every time I turned to look at the house, I felt a strange presence, as if someone or something was watching me from the darkness. I turned back, looked at the open window, and in that moment I saw a blurry figure standing right in the dark room. It was not an ordinary person. The figure had no clear shape, but was just a black mass, clinging to the space like an oil slick. I stood still, unable to move. The space around me seemed to freeze. Only my heavy breathing echoed in that silence. Strange noises, strange figures, all seemed like part of a never-ending nightmare. It felt like someone was holding my hand, pulling me into that space, a space filled with darkness and invisible creatures. But that shadow didn't just stay still in the house. It was moving, going out the window, looking straight at me through the glass. The windows slowly closed again, as if there was some force that wanted to hide everything, not let me see the truth. And so it continued every night. It wasn't a coincidence anymore, but a terrifying reality, to the point that I didn't dare leave the house at night. I began to feel that presence getting closer and closer. Everything in this house seemed to be no longer normal. Those noises, those doors opening by themselves, all were signs of something terrible about to happen. Then one night, when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to clear things up. I took a long stick, prepared to face that terrifying presence, though I did not know what it was. I entered the hallway, step by step, feeling the coldness enveloping me. As I approached the living room, I saw a dim light coming from under the door. I did not know where it came from, but I felt as if I was being watched. Entering the room, I saw a strange figure standing silently against the wall. A dark figure, no eyes, no mouth, just a blurry silhouette waiting. I stood there, unable to move, and in that moment a voice whispered in my head like a curse. "You have come, and you cannot escape me." That was the last time I saw my house. After that night, I do not remember anything, only that I woke up in a dark, musty place, and something very strange was waiting for me. The sounds, the shadows, they became a part of me, and I couldn't escape them. As the darkness deepens and the stories grow more unsettling, we venture deeper into the unknown together. Each chilling tale brings us closer to the eerie truths lurking just beyond the veil of reality. The terror doesn't stop here. It only gets worse. Subscribe to DTC, The Place of the Brave, now, and stay on the edge of your seat. You won't want to miss what's lurking in the shadows next. Hit that notification bell and prepare for the next terrifying chapter. Remember, in the world of DTC, the creeps are always waiting, and they never rest. iMoon,